Hello guys, welcome to my project ideas. This video is a part of an ongoing series that is SAP ABAP projects. In this particular video, we'll be discussing SAP OData project. We'll be creating an OData project from scratch and we'll be also doing CRUD operation on top of that. So there are a few prerequisites for that. So you should be aware regarding SAP ABAP tables and a few SAP SQL queries like reading a data from table, updating a table, modifying a table, deleting a record from a table. Also, basic concept of object-oriented technology that SAP ABAP uses. Okay, so we'll jump to our ABAP editor. So this is a table that we are going to use in our SAP OData project. So we have created a table and we have also a few records already in place. And we have marked as of now all as keys itself. So, but in real use cases, only a few keys will be there. Okay, fine. So the T code to create a BAP report in OData is SCZW. That stands for SAP Navigator Gateway Service Builder. So here you see something called create project. You click that. So name of the project, Z employee OData. This is what I am going to give. This is employee details OData. There are three options: SAP service with annotations, as a service with vocabulary based annotations model for reference services. So the very basic one will be the default one for us. So we don't have any package, so we leave that as a local object. So now we have an OData created. The very first step is to understand what all these are about. So for that we have created a set of articles for you. So you can visit this website called gocoding.org and all the links will be provided in the description. Here you can understand and read step-by-step process to create OData, and also we have mentioned everything regarding the process and even the details related to the steps. So we'll not cover everything here, but certainly we'll create one entity time. So ultimately, what we have to do is we have to import a DDIC structure. That is a table will be imported. The table that I have shown you a few minutes ago. Yeah, this one. And the name you can choose whatever the name you want for the entity. So we keep the name of the entity as well as or we can just call it employee data, something like that, or just employee will also work fine. And you write the name of the table here and click on next. So here we have an option to import a few fields or all the fields. So we'll import all the fields. What all keys we have? So I believe we can take this as field. Also, one recommendation is there, you should copy, all the fields from this particular file and paste it here. Then the field name that is in the table should be similar to the field names in OData. Fine. Also, it is always recommended to have same keys that are being used in table to have here also. But certainly address and skill does not fit, so I'll choose these as my fields, or only ID and first name as my key. I can always change it later on and click on finish. So now we can click on your data, check for errors. No errors there. The next step is to generate runtime objects. It will give you something like this. Just click on OK. So it will be generating some classes for me, and those classes will be used to write code in future. Great. OData service is activated. So now to read our data, we can either map our reading operations directly with the service implementation here, which we will do in future use cases where we will be creating more data using CDS, or we can go to DPCXT and search for the classes generated just now and redefine them. So the concept of redefining is the concept of object-oriented ABAP. So we'll not give a deep dive on that part, but I will be redefining all these 5 entities. So I will explain one by one what all these are. So I'll make it editable. So we have something called redefine here. So this is employee get entity. We'll just save, try to activate if possible. Go back, redefine this one, save, activate. And then create is also required. So you don't have to activate every time. Just taking extra precaution so that we do not activate any code filled with error. And the last one. So till now what we have done is like we created a table. On top table in SEGW transaction we created OData, activated the OData after importing the DDIC structure, and now we are redefining the functions or the methods of the classes that were generated. Since we have defined the one are required, so now we can filter. So now we can see only the one that we are going to work now. So again, all these things are already mentioned, like how to perform OData query, how to create, how to update, and how to delete. All these articles will be mentioned in the description, but will not be referring these articles because these articles are highly descriptive. So we'll be keeping our use case, writing small codes. So for that also I have prepared a list of code like this. So just to copy and paste them. So we'll start with get entity. We'll hide these signatures, and as of now we don't need this, but in future videos I will tell you the use case of those particular codes that were commented, because that are those codes are very necessary for our use case. Let's copy paste for errors, enter, activate, and go to current entity set. Again delete these. File, activate. So I'll discuss the code later on. Just first mentioning the code inside the data that we have created, and I believe it is not required here also, so just delete it. Then for update, and the last one delete. Great. So we have till now followed five steps. Number one is creating a table. Number two is coming to a CGW and creating an OData. Number three is importing a DDIC structure. And number four is generating the OData. And number fifth is redefining the methods of the classes that were generated. And after these steps, number six step is like adding code to your CRUD operations, right? So those code we'll discuss later on, but we have done that part also. So once you are done with these part, you go back, try to regenerate the classes, and always remember to write your code in DPCXT. All the code related to CRUD operations is written here. All the code written related to annotations that also we'll be discussing in a different project will be written here. Otherwise, if you write in other classes, these are generated every time you click this button, so it will be deleted. But if I go back in DPCXT, you can see that our code is still there. Fine. Okay then. So now, before we start like testing our code, it's important to register it, the OData. So the part where we work on registration is like service maintenance is something that provides us. So if your basis team has already configured the service maintenance here, then you can find something called local. I can show you how exactly it looks. So you see service maintenance there, and all the systems, all the environments are mentioned here. So it's like development, quality, production systems are here. But in our use case, nothing is there, so we'll be following the second way. That is using a T code called IWFNT maintenance. This one. So I'll just like slash O H. Okay, and scroll down and we'll see my OData if it is visible here or not. So my OData name is Z employee OData, and I don't see here Z employee OData, right? Yes, nothing is there. It means I need to add a new service. So it says we need to enter something like this Z star. Let's try. Yeah. If you see, this is the one Z employee OData service. So this was generated when we click the generate button the very first time. And once we click here, we see add select a service. It will be in our local. You can always come back to this portion, and this will be selected as local and package name, which is not for our use case. And great. It says it is already registered now. So if you come down, you might find it here. This is the one. And we'll also see an option to activate this. The mode is active now. Fine. Now the time is to test the service. We click on this gateway client and it will open up the service name. We can always have multiple options here. So the very first thing is like I will be testing the metadata. So I will click on add the URA option, double click on metadata and click on execute. So 200 means successful. So our metadata loaded fine. So now I will have an option, check my employee set. So the five operations here are get entity set. The very first operation I am doing is get entity set. And I click execute. So what it does will now be reading the code. parallelly. The code written is select all from this table into corresponding fields of ET entity set. So if you see the signature, in this something ET entity set was already defined. So it is the set that is actually sent to the outer world. You can see that API return is having this structure ET entity set. So although the table of the entity was created, the structure was based on our table itself. So if we'll select all from edit set into this will also work fine. So the corresponding fields is just to make sure nothing goes wrong. So a single piece of line select query to bring all data. You see, I had only one data, right? That data is here. If you do not remember, I can go back to the table, check the table here, and one data is there, and one data is also here. Fine. So second operation is get entity. To get entity, I need to provide the key. We have created only two keys for our use case. If you remember, only ID and first name are selected. So that is something they already create here. So I will just copy this, paste it, and execute it. So again, I was able to get entity. So now I will just read the code to cross check what I had written and what I am getting. So if I just go to the last line, it says select single star from the table, select single entry from the table into ER entity. ER entity is like a workspace. It just transfer one single set of data as output, and where the key's first name is equal to whatever the value I'm sending. So if I go back, the first name I'm sending as Surajit, and that was there in the table, right? And if I see the initial code, so we have defined some fields, and we have something called IO tech request context. It is also mentioned here. So it brings whatever query you are adding here, like this. It brings that data from the query to OData, and from that we are getting everything in form of table, LT keys, and from the table we are reading the key first name, whatever the key we have mentioned, into a local variable ls key. Ls key is defined here, and that ls key is a key value pair combination. The key will be first name and the value will be whatever value we are sending, Surajit. That's why we pass that particular value to the first name and just fetch single value from a table. So the get entity concept is to fetch single value from the table. I hope you have understood this part. If not, you can always go back to the article and read more about it there. So now third step is to create a data. To create a data, we have to always first read the data in this service maintenance, so that we can use this data as a reference. So something here mentioned is use as a request. And do that, you transfer this data to this part, right? And when you create, you don't need any query here. You change this HTTP method to post, and then you change the details you want. So I will make it as a QUIB. That's IDDIQUI. Brushes there are doing. Skills are manager. That's it. I've created a new set of data. I have made it a post. Nothing is mentioned here. Click execute. Again, a green code is here and data is created. You see, same thing they have returned. So I'll go back to a table to cross check if data is added or not. Data is added here. That's a great thing. Now we'll go back to the code and read what exactly is mentioned there. Create entity. So in create entity, if I close the signature, you'll see something is called IO data provider, right? IO data provider is also mentioned in this signature, IO data provider. So there are some predefined structured fields which are helping us to get data. So in get entities, if you remember also, we were using something called IO tag request. So it was returning the data from the query. This is called query. This is the query line. So from the queries, if something is returning, that comes here. If data is sending like this, in form of as a request, this is a request being sent. So if we are sending data itself, we use this IO data provider. From IO data provider, we are reading data and into a local structure, ls input data. And once we have read that particular data, so if it is not empty, what we do, we move the corresponding field of ls first data into ls first name. So ls first name is a structure that is based upon the table. We cannot insert anything which is not matching the table exactly. So that's why we have extra uh, level of check here, and then we insert the data directly in the table. That's it, insert query. And based upon the if the table is getting the data inserted in itself, then it returns size of RC as 0, and then we are also sending the same data back to us. That's why we also get the same data back to us like this. So that's the way you do the create operation. If I go to update operation, the same thing happens. IO data provider again reads the same thing, but here we just switch the query, SQL query. That's it. So what I am changing is I'm changing the last name, because only last name query I have written here. So if I change the last name, it will always change. Suppose I make it two, make I call it put. But how exactly our query will understand for which particular set you are doing it? So for that you have to always pass these things, the keys. So you need to pass the keys in update, you need to pass the keys in set entity, get entity and update query, and also in delete, because delete also needs to get the query to identify which particular set we have to delete. So in this case, which particular set we have to update. Fine, we'll click on execute, and it is not returning anything, but the status is 204. We will go back to the table, refresh it, 2 is added here, right? Great. So once we are done with this operation also, we'll do the last one, that is deletion. Straightforward, same way. IO text request context, we're getting keys. In ls keys, they are moving the key value pair and then fetching the value. So same operation, just click on delete and click execute. Again 204. If you go back here, data is deleted, right? So yeah, that's it. So we will be also mentioning this piece of code in the description so that you have a reference. We will also be mentioning the fields of the table, and you can take a reference of these as well as the articles that will be mentioning the links in the description, and based on that you can work on your OData, and you can always put your queries in the comments. Thanks a lot.